Stephen. Thank you, Chair. And just to commend the Minister, because I think the publication of this paper is very welcome. And I'd also like to welcome the fact that he's consulting the Dáil before bringing his proposals to Cabinet. It's welcome to see that. I'd like to speak briefly, if I may, Chair, just about two aspects of the defence paper, and it's on funding and on the triple lock. A member of the House put forward a neutrality bill recently, and we debated it here in the Dáil. And someone made the point during the course of that debate, they were glad to see that defence spending in Europe was decreasing. And I suppose they made it from the point of view of someone who's being anti-war, and that's absolutely a valid point of view and an appropriate point of view. No one is in favour of war. I think they were probably also making the point in terms of someone who is against what they see as the American military complex or warmongering machine. And again, that's a valid point of view if you hold it. But if you do hold that point of view, then I think the decrease in defence spending in Europe is a bad thing. Because what it actually does is it makes us more dependent on others for our defence, more dependent on America, if that is someone who you're against in terms of their military activities, more dependent on them for our defence. And it makes us less able to influence what they do in the name of our defence, or what they perceive to be our defence. And we know from recent history how often those perceptions have been wrong. It's my view that Europe should be spending more on defence, and that we should be spending more on defence. So that we can decide ourselves in Ireland and in Europe how best to deal with the challenges and the threats that are emerging within our continent and also in our near abroad. And that requires responsibility on our part. These challenges require defence spending. The challenges that we see today and the kind of spending that buys boats and helicopters that are doing such good work in the Mediterranean to save lives. And I commend the Eliathna and the crew who are doing such brave work out there. And I think it's fantastic that the Taoiseach and the Minister sent these personnel abroad on our behalf to do such good work for the people there. We have to recognise our responsibilities in the world, in our continent, and we have to allocate our resources appropriately. So it's good to note the increase in spending in 2015 for our defence forces when we compare it to 2014. And perhaps we'll see that level of funding stabilise even higher. Deputy Hayden referred to this. I mean, I don't know what the actual appropriate amount of spending is for defence forces of a country of our size that is as active abroad in peacekeeping missions and other missions as we are. But I assume it's something a bit higher, and I hope that the Minister can work towards that higher figure in the years to come. Some people have spoken previously in this debate about whether we need the defence forces or not, but we can no longer submit to this free rider problem when it comes to our security. We have to make investments, we have to have policy, and we have to recognise that we have a responsibility even when it comes to traditional threats, because there are threats on the eastern borders of Europe. There are threats to our friends and our allies and to our neighbours, and threats that we might have to share in the responsibility of dealing with, hopefully politically. But we don't know what's happening in the future. We don't know what that might mean. And the fact that we have the advantage of geography is no longer meaningful. That first line of defence no longer stands when we talk about traditional threats, but also when we talk about asymmetric threats like cyber terrorism or indeed terrorism. Those groups that exist today that don't recognise state borders or governments. So it's encouraging that the White Paper recognises all of this and makes commitments in that regard. As for the triple lock, Minister, we've had discussions about this in the past, and I put down parliamentary questions last year, and since we've been elected, I think we have to end the triple lock. I don't think it's a responsible position to take as an independent country. And it's not about wanting to go off and have unilateral adventures abroad, but it's about recognising that there may be missions in Europe or close to Europe that are justified and that we have a responsibility to engage in, but that which certain members of the Security Council may veto. The Security Council is not a democratic body. So why we would outsource our foreign policy to that, I don't quite understand. And I think we need to take ownership of it once more. I mean, it wouldn't prohibit us from being involved in UN-led missions or leading them ourselves, but the fact that we would not be able to participate, maybe even in a mission in the European Union, who knows, without the consent of the Security Council, which could likely be blocked by one of those members, I don't agree with. And just to conclude, in relation to the expertise that we do have in our defence forces, the expertise that we employ abroad, particularly in conflict zones, particularly when it comes to IEDs, it's great to see that. I think it needs to be continued and it needs to be encouraged. I support all of the plans in that regard. And just as a final point, because neutrality has come up, I mentioned it myself, but also other speakers talked about this. Active neutrality as a concept is complete nonsense. We should jettison, I think, any pretense of neutrality as a country, and I said this before in the Dáil. I believe it's meaningless as a concept. I can't find any previous example of it in history anywhere where it's actually worked. But I also believe it's not a responsible position to take in the modern world.
Thank you.
Thank you.